Well, I can always remember going to the Empire on a Saturday night or Friday with my mother, but this was regarded not quite up to it as a theatre then, and it was like a bug house almost then, and then gradually improved. But that's when I first became aware, was wartime days. And I really looked forward to it, and I think I got a taste for theatre by going there. It was musicals, comedy mostly, and there I saw people actually, Laurel and Hardy, and Julie Andrews, a little girl of 12, and loads of other stars that you wouldn't remember now. But I loved the theatre, and I couldn't wait to sort of go there every week. It was always my ambition to be an actress, actually. And I do know why, but the story is too long to tell you. My very first interest in theatre was, we had during the war 2 WAFs to stay with us, because if you had a house with 6 rooms in, you had to take in members of the force. Well, we had 6 rooms, and that sounds grand, but it's not. It's just a kitchen, middle room, and a front room, and no bathroom, no telephones or anything like that. But we took these 2 WAFs in, and one of them was just a gift coming to the house. She was an actress herself, and she used to read to me, doing all the different voices, and she used to bring books like Winnie the Pooh and Wind in the Willows and Beatrix Potter, which my mother wouldn't have known about, to be honest. But I would have had Jack and Jill from my mother. But she taught me how to play the piano. She taught me to act. She could draw. She just about could do everything. And in that 2 years, she genuinely shaped my life. So that's my first interest in drama, was that. And then when I grew up, I wanted to go to London. My father said, he said, you can get a job now as a typist. That's the best thing you can do. It's a good job for you, typist. Which I hated. I did it, but I loved the company there because I got a great chance to take people off and do funny walks and things. But later on, when I was 42, actually, I thought, well, I'll never go. If I don't go soon, I'm not going to get anywhere. So I told my husband I'd like to go. Well, he said, no one's going to pluck you from obscurity and put you there. You've got to fight for what you get. So I thought, well, he's quite right. So I came down to this theatre, and I said, could I speak to Mr. Chilvers, please? So he came and he said, yes. I said, would you take me on in the rep season? I'd like to act it for a living. Didn't bat an eyelid, and he said, well, you could go to college first, he said, to learn the trade. I said, I can't do that. I got a little girl, I can't do that. Oh, well, I'll let you know then, he said. So I thought it was the end of that. But indeed, he rang me up on day just before my 42nd birthday, and he said yes, he was prepared to take me on. And that very day we heard that awful news that Ryan had died, and I thought, and I so looked forward to meeting him, because everyone loved Ryan, and he was just such a talent, such a wonderful talent. But that was the day I was taken on, and from then on I haven't stopped really. Well, my first job was ASM, and I had to work 42 weeks before becoming a full equity member and actually getting on stage. So I wasn't very good as an ASM. I had to walk around town and pick up and go into various shops and beg for various props that I could use for the show. And I found it a bit embarrassing to do it, so I wasn't very good. But do it I had to. One day, Glyn Houston was here doing a play, and it was a period piece set in the beginning of the century, something like that. And before the show had started, he said, do me a favour, he said, come get me a bottle of milk, I've run out of milk. So I thought, right, I'll go now once the play starts. I'll slip across to the Singleton, they'll sell milk to me. So I went across the Singleton, it was raining, I had jeans on and a mac, and a hood on as well. And I was walking across the back of the stage with a bottle of milk, and I thought, it's funny, I'm in the light here. When I looked, I was in front on the stage. It was a composite set, and I'd walked on with a bottle of milk in a period piece in a Saturday afternoon, where I nearly collapsed. And in one moment, I thought, do I go forward do I go back? What do I do? What do I do? Well, anyway, I got to the other side, and I thought, if John Silver saw that today, I'd be sacked before I ever get near the stage to act. So anyway, I went around various people who had been in the afternoon, and no one said a word about me walking across. Oh, I thought I got away with that. That's fine. And then, just as I was clearing something up from the stage manager went by and he said, "Menna, what the hell were you doing crossing the stage?" He said, "with a bottle of milk in your hand in the middle of the afternoon performance." For some reason, they did keep me on. And he would direct without you realising he had directed you. I can remember doing one play, and because you do so many, one on top of the other, it's very difficult to find the character sometimes. And I couldn't find the character in this one. So I went to John Chilvers and I said, "John, I can't find the character in this one." "Oh, for goodness sake, get on and just say it," he said. So I thought, well, that's not much help. But it was, actually. I went, during rehearsal time, I just sort of did it, and eventually the character found me. And I thought, well, it's as simple as that. Why didn't I think of that? But no, he was very, very good, and he could be very amusing as well. He didn't like any interference while he was directing a play. But we used to have a little woman here called Flash, we used to call her. She used to walk at 2 miles an hour. And she came into the rehearsal room one day. Everyone looked, because you're not supposed to come into the rehearsal room with John. And she took her time walking down step by step. We all waited breathlessly to see what she said. And she said, "Do you want beef or lamb this weekend?" to John. And he said, "Lamb, I think. And do you want your shirts done this week, or are you all right for shirts?" "Yes, I think I'm all right for shirts, thank you very much," he said. So that we used to have wonderful times and hilarious laughter with various characters. My first panto here was Puss in Boots, and some of the characters there were wonderful. We had the Chuckle Brothers and Davy Jones from the Monkeys. Well, we used to stand at the side, obviously waiting to go on stage in the night and get chatting to those ever at your side, and it happened to be Davy Jones. So we were talking about musicals and things in general, and he said, "Have you seen the show Pickwick? It was very famous at the time." And I said, "Oh yes, I loved it. It was really great. And Harry Seacombe was great in it, and I met him." I said, "I was thrilled to bits." "Yes," I said, I did enjoy that." "Did you see the touring company?" he said. Well, funny enough, I said I did. I happened to be living in America at the time, and I was thrilled to have a little something from home, and I knew some of the cast, so I went along to see him. The only thing that spoilt it for me was the fellow who did Sam Weller. He was bloody hopeless. I said, and not about, I'd seen Roy Castle do it, who was a master at it, he's wonderful, but this one was awful. And he said, "That was me," he said. Well, there was nothing to say. There was a big blank space by the two of us, and we just stood there for the rest of the time waiting to go on. We never got on very much after that. And Harry H. Corbett was not well at the time. Well, he really wasn't well, because 10 days after he left the panto, the poor man died. But he went one day to see the doctor in the afternoon, and I knew he was going, so I said, "How do you get on?" "Terrible," he said. He said, "I was terribly ill." He said, "Very, very, I'm not going to him again. I'll find someone else to go to," he said. Poor old thing. And who else was in that one? Now, Harry Corbett would only come into panto if he could bring his friend Duval into it. Now, Duval was what one can loosely call a magician. And every night was different with him, and every night he made some disastrous mistake. The first night he had the birds all in different colours flying down from the upstairs, from the gods right down, and landing on his heads apparently. Well, first of all, the birds wouldn't come. When they did come down, they landed on the orchestra's heads, and the pianist was petrified of birds and ran screaming off the piano and into the wings. It was a disaster. Now, when he came on in another act, he was bringing on some birds again. But this time, I was on stage and at the back of him, so I could see all that was going on. His back was writhing. And I thought, what on earth has he got under his back? But of course it was the birds, and they were all under the birds hiding until the spot had come. And then he was supposed to suddenly produce a bird. and the bird didn't turn up. He produced it again, and this little head appeared around the corner, a little bird, to see what was going on. It was hilarious with him, it really was. Another one of Duval's tricks was he had a long sort of, well, it looked like a fishing rod really, or a fishing net. And he'd call the birds, he loved birds obviously. He caught the bird, but instead of bringing it down, he hit the bird, and the bird dropped dead on the stage. And he picked it up like this, did the wing, pretending it was still alive. And the poor thing was hanging with his head and his wings held up by his hands. Well, he had a row for that apparently. He said, you must improve your act. And then he had another act with a rabbit. And the rabbit appeared from the hat. Oh, same old gag it was. But anyway, this little gag the following night didn't come on. I said, well, and afterwards I said, what happened to the rabbit? Oh, he said, I had to get rid of him. He turned on me, he said. I couldn't, he started to stamp his feet, and I couldn't cope with him. And I was convinced there was a little shop opposite the Crown Theatre with the little animals in. I thought, I'm sure he's taken that rabbit over there. So I went in to see if he had. I was so convinced he'd taken the rabbit, but no fair play, he hadn't. I don't know why I didn't ask any more. I thought he probably ate it for supper or something, so I didn't ask any more. One of my favourite actors that I worked with was the wonderful Freddie Lees. He was a superb actor and one of the best dames in the country, apparently, I heard. And he played panto here for many, many years, and I also played with him in rep company. And I can remember doing one play called The Elephant Man, and he was on stage with me, and I dried on stage, and he could see that I had. So he tried to help me out by giving me a line in disguise, and he said, "And what did the doctor say?" And I looked at him and I said, "Not a lot." And from then on, that was always our joke between us. It doesn't matter how many years had gone past, we always used to say, how was what did the doctor say? Not a lot. Every time we met. But, Freddie was wonderful. And funnily enough, I heard from him just before he died. And I hadn't heard from him for years from then. But he had seen something I did on television, Little Britain, and wrote to tell me that how much he enjoyed it. But, oh yes, I'm very proud to say that I was fortunate enough to work with Freddie Lees. Wonderful. I worked with Frank Vickery for a good few years, very happy years. And how we met was, he saw me on television doing a play called Ballroom, written by Bob Pugh. And he liked the character so much that he thought, I'd like to get in touch with her. I could write for her. And that's what he did. He got in touch with me and for me to go up to the Rhondda to see one of his plays, and I did. And we did hit it off very well. Although he was from the Rhondda and I was from Swansea, we were meeting somewhere in between, and we could almost finish each other's sentences, you know. So he was a marvellous writer for me, and people used to say, how do you remember all those lines? Well, I used to say, actually, it's quite easy because he's followed my way of speaking. And he'd always say, if you think that's a better word, use it. And so he made my life a lot easier than most directors would, actually. The first play I ever did for him was a play called Kiss on the Bottom. And it was a serious subject. It was about a cancer ward, actually. And I thought, well, when I read the first script, I thought, this isn't funny, you know. Cancer ward is not something one would write about. And my mother had only just died of cancer. And so I was a bit sensitive about it anyway. But I reread the script, and I thought, yeah, this is hilarious after all, even though the subject isn't. So it became one of his most successful plays. And some of the quotes were straight from my mother. For instance, when she was actually dying, she was going off into a sort of semi-comas, and she woke up one day and she said, "Haven't I gone yet? I'll try again." You know, little remarks like that, and no, it was a wonderful play. And then he also wrote one called For Me, which was a one-woman, Mickey, Sleeping with Mickey. We had to call it just Mickey. It was meant to be Mickey Mouse, only Disney objected to us using that. But it was a wonderful, wonderful play to do. Very frightening, because you're there on the stage on your own, and if they don't like you, well, lump it or go out. you've got to like the character for all that time. But I got used to it, and I rather liked having the play depending on me. And I can remember once I tried on stage, and I thought, what am I going to do now? So I just said to the audience, I'll just have a cup of tea, and then I'll be back. So I went off stage, looked up my cue lines, and came back on with a cup of tea. Passed by, no one knew the difference. But I used to come into the theatre some nights when we were touring with it, and I wouldn't see a soul. I'd come in, and over the tannoy system would come, start as beginners, and I'd only hear the voice. And at the end of the show, I'd come, take my bow, go off, no one there. And I thought, well, all this, and there's no one here to see me, to take me home or anything at all. I was totally isolated, but it was a beautiful play. I really loved it. The last film I ever did was Pride, and it was with great pride that I look back on that film as well, as a matter of fact. It was quite a glittering cast: Imelda Staunton, Bill Nye, and Dominic West. I think that Dominic West was the favourite, though, and he had a lovely dance sequence to do, which we've spent a whole day doing. Now, normally this is very tiring, but not in the case of Dominic West. It was very exciting to watch. Beautiful dancer, and I've never seen so many girls with dropped jaws, not drop jaws, draws, but jaws. And it was a pleasure. It was a great pleasure to watch him, indeed. But it was a wonderful film to have made, because, to be honest, I didn't know the story about the gay community supporting them at all, during, providing food and money to the miners. But it's a story that needed to be told, and it was told very well. It's one of the happiest moments of my life, being on set on that film. And I have been working with them about 30 years, actually. I've done about 3 films. But this is the only one that's got the nomination for an Oscar. So that was a great thrill, And then I got the British Animation Awards. Well, it was just me in it, so I must say I was delighted to have won it. And Ricky Gervais was one that I beat. I can't get over that. He must look at this thing and say, who the hell is this Menna Trussler? Because who would have heard of me? But I was very thrilled to have it. And as it was the end of my career, I thought, well, that's going out on high. There's nothing like performing on stage to a full house. And when the lights come down, it's like the sun shining on you, and you're opening up like a flower. You can't describe it. It's fantastic. And a standing ovation, well, that's even better, but you don't get too many of those. But when you do, it's worth it.